So here you can see that there's an area that's all built up with this sort of housing, and along the edge you can see that there's white, and so that's the beach. And so this area along, we talked about this at Long Point and we talked about this at Port Stanley. This is an area of the barrier beach, so this is on ocean, and then behind that we have areas of open water, but most of this area here is mangrove ecosystem. So the barrier beach is protecting the marsh that's behind it and the swamp ecosystem. So the mangroves in behind. A lot of times if it's much calmer, that it's not right on the ocean, you can have areas where it's quieter and the mangrove can actually extend out into the ocean a bit. But those areas need to be much more stable and with less wave action. Here you can see a road that's moving through the mangrove. And so these roadways are built up and they stop the movement of the water moving back and forth through into the marsh. And here you can see I'm looking higher up, and in the distance you can see where the barrier beach is, and the hotels and the different houses are built on the barrier beach. And so a lot of times they destroy that barrier beach and, you know, remove all the vegetation because they want it pure sand. And so it damages the hydrology of those areas. They dig into the sand, and so the hydrology is affected and the mangrove behind is damaged. So increase the salt that's in there. You don't have the movement of nutrients as much as well. So here you can see the roadway, and underneath every so often they would put a culvert, but normally there would be a constant movement in and out of the marsh. So here the tide is coming in, so the salt water is coming in from the ocean. And so as it moves inland, it's mixing with the fresh water, and so you get that cline of salt. It's a halocline that it's called. And so different species can occur along that different cline. And you can see in the background, you can see that the mangrove has formed different islands in the background. And so it's accumulating sediment as the plants are able to grow in little shallow areas. And so gradually they build up little islands bigger and bigger, and trapping that sediment and absorbing the nutrients out of the water, cleaning the water, different aspects like that providing all those ecosystem services, and also storm management. So all those hotels and houses, they're built right on the edge, they can be damaged because they're not protected anymore, and the sand is unconsolidated, so it moves more easily out of there. And here you can see on the other side how the water is moving in and underneath the road. So normally there wouldn't be a road there and the water would be able to flush in and out, and one of the major problems is that these culverts fill in, and so salt accumulates in the marsh and it can change the ecosystem so that certain species start to die out. So you can kill whole areas of marsh because you haven't had that movement of water. And here you can see that the Mayan people are using certain areas for salt production. So they're actually extracting the salt from the water. They allow the water to go into these little shallow areas that they've created, and then during the dry season it dries down and the salt accumulates in the bottom, and then they harvest the salt. And because this is an area where the flamingos are, it also has a pink algae, and then the different organisms eat the pink algae, and then the flamingos eat the pink crustaceans. That's what turns their plumage pink. So it's an interesting part of that ecosystem as well. And you can see the root systems sticking up of the different mangrove trees, and that's how they're getting oxygen down into the root system. Because a lot of trees, they can't tolerate being in water. They're not aquatic species, so the mangrove species have adapted different strategies to work with salt water and to work with the low oxygen in the root system. And you can see all along the edge here, there's all these different rhizomes that have come up And here you can see the pink algae. So this is the pink algae that's growing within that area, and that's what the crustaceans are eating, and then the pink flamingos are eating. So actually, if the flamingos don't have that, their color actually isn't pink. They start out white when they're first born. So that's an interesting little bit of trivia. And you can see the different islands that have been built up over time as the mangroves accumulate sediment. And you see this whole area is, the soil is sandy. So it's very sandy, and any sort of organic matter is coming from the water, and it's coming from the land. So most of the nutrients actually come off the land and then go into the ocean, but as it's moving through the mangrove, it's cleaning the water before it gets out into the ocean. And then these are kind of high nutrient areas, and this is why you get a lot of production, a lot of birds, a lot of fish, and that sort of thing, because the nutrients are coming out of the groundwater in some areas, and some areas are coming from the rainwater flowing across the land and coming into the mangroves and establishing themselves. So here you can see this area of mangrove. This is where the tide has gone out, and so it's created a bit of a mud flat, and you can see how the algae is turning the sand pink. And you get a lot of different shorebirds that go into these areas. So this side is the barrier beach that we're actually standing on. And so the homes are being built in that area. And in the background, it's a little bit hard to see, but in the center there's a couple of flamingos. And in the background, the white lines on the background are actually a whole flock of flamingos. Unfortunately, we didn't have our high-power camera for taking nice shots of that day. But it's just nice to see the flamingos in there. They're kind of like a top species. You know, they're big, but they're living off this particular type of ecosystem, and maintaining the health of these different ecosystems is really important, or else you're not going to have the flamingos. And if you change the hydrology so that pink algae doesn't exist anymore, then the pink crustaceans don't exist, and then the pink flamingos, you're going to have white flamingos instead. So it's just interesting, all the different aspects of the ecology of these different ecosystems and how they all work together to create unique species, and how specialized the flamingos are for eating those particular species as well. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Your support keeps these videos free for everyone.